This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, Citizen-Made Radio.
Welcome to Emergence News. This program is brought to you from the fabulous Plains FM studios in Christchurch, South Island of New Zealand, Aotearoa. My name is Nigel, and joining me in the studio are John and Peter. We are volunteers for Share International, and the program is about the emergence of the next world teacher, Maitreya, a member of the spiritual hierarchy. In recent years, Maitreya's emergence, news of his emergence, came primarily from a British artist and author, Benjamin Creme. He spoke and wrote about this from the mid-1970s until his death in 2016. He described Maitreya as a teacher, an educator concerned with today's problems. Maitreya is one of the masters of wisdom, those members of the human family who have made the evolutionary journey ahead of us. There is reason to believe that many of the great figures in human history were conscious initiates, such as Pythagoras, Socrates, Plato, Shakespeare, Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci, and even politicians such as Abraham Lincoln. At this moment in world history, the dawn of the Aquarian Age, the masters of wisdom are ready to return, to externalize to the everyday world, with their leader, the world teacher, the one known in the West as the Christ, Maitreya. They stand now waiting for us to take, of our own free will, the needed first steps in the direction of unity and cooperation, and then they will emerge with Maitreya, and their presence in the world will become an established fact. Welcome, Peter. Welcome, John, to the program.
Thank you, Nigel. Very much, Nigel.
So that's interesting. According to Creme, only then will they emerge with Maitreya. So they're waiting for us to take the first steps towards unity and cooperation. Are we moving any closer to that, John?
We're failing miserably.
Yes, we are failing miserably, Peter. And I think the other thing that Creme has said around this is there needs to be a degree of peace on the planet. And, of course, we're failing at that as well.
There's an interesting article which you can find on the Share International website. That's shareinternational.org. It's called Maitreya's Approach to Humanity. It's by a Dutch co-worker with Share International called Alexander Dekker, and it makes good reading on the subjects. It's in two parts. So check that out on the Share International website, Maitreya's Approach to Humanity. And it's quite a good history lesson at the same time. All right, John, what are you looking at later in the program?
Okay, I'm going to look at who am I? I'm going to look at honesty, sincerity and detachment. And I'm going to think about be who you are.
My goodness, there's a lot of big questions being answered there.
Yes.
So anybody on their spiritual quest, anybody asking themselves, why am I so unhappy? Why do I feel so desperate? I need some answers. This is the program to listen to.
This is the program.
I look forward to it. Okay, John. And what about you, Peter? What have you got lined up for us?
Well, I've got a master's message to start off with, Nigel. And they're all so good. Every Share International has a master's message in it. And they were recorded through Benjamin Creme at the time of writing. So,
and he became a vehicle for that information, didn't he?
That's right, yes.
How does that work?
Well, he overshadowed him, in actual fact, and talks that he gave in London, and he was being overshadowed by Maitreya in those talks, but he also had a master himself who was virtually on his shoulder, and he could ask him questions at any time. And so he had a continuous rapport with one of the masters, and at times a definite connection with Maitreya himself.
So the 140 messages given out by Benjamin Creme were when he was overshadowed by Maitreya.
That's right.
Fabulous reading, those messages.
And in fact, he used to overshadow me at the meditations. I remember at the town hall, John.
Yep.
And he was overshadowed by Sai Baba and Maitreya as well at one time. Yeah.
And I did a transmission in San Francisco with Benjamin Creme being present. He was overshadowed there as well.
Was he? Yes.
So interesting man.
Yes, and you can feel the energetic difference, to be quite honest.
Very much.
And your first experience of Maitreya was here in Christchurch, John?
Yes.
At the town hall?
Yes and no. I was introduced to Maitreya. I was taken out to the house in New Brighton, Peter, that was kind of a meeting place for all the spiritual groups.
Oh, yes.
In Christchurch, and it might have been called the House of the Rising Sun, or it had some kind of spooky name. Yeah. But anyway, I got taken there, and I saw a pamphlet with a photo of Benjamin Creme and the word Maitreya, and it was the word Maitreya and the photo of Benjamin Creme that piqued my interest. And then sometime later there was an ad in the paper, and I think, Peter, you and a group put that ad in the paper. And advertising Benjamin Creme was coming to New Zealand and giving a talk.
And was the talk well attended?
It was full, wasn't
it? Yeah. I was completely enthralled. I sat there and was completely enthralled.
And what was his opening line which really impressed you?
And it's the line that I used for years when we were doing public talks here, and it goes along the lines of, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to recruit you. I am here to tell you a story. And what you take out of that story is entirely up to you. My role is simply done by telling the story. And for me, that was expressing detachment. And I was in sales at the time. And sitting listening to that, I went, that is how you introduce yourself when you're in sales. There's an element of detachment there. He wasn't selling anything. He was just telling a story.
Telling a story, and it's up to you what you do with that information.
And there's a degree of honesty and sincerity there, isn't there?
Yes, and you talked on the last program about an American journalist, Dick Larson.
Yes.
And he says, if you're listening to a radio program such as this, or you're reading the Share International magazine, or you're looking at the Share International website, if you agree with 20-30% of what you're reading, that's enough to give you plenty to ponder on. We're not asking you to agree with everything we're saying.
Listen, Nigel, as you know, I did some university studies as an older person, and if I picked up a book, if I was preparing for an essay, and got one thing out of it,
worthwhile,
that was gold. And I'd say that to anybody. You pick up a book, a non-fiction book, or maybe even a fiction book, and get one idea that sticks with you, that book's been worth it. Absolutely.
Okay, let's have a moment of inspiration here, Peter. Tell it this master's message you've got lined up for us.
Yes, okay, I'll do that. As the dark clouds of war gather and obscure the sunlit sky of peace, that response of humanity is twofold. Mute acceptance and compliance with the will of the warmongers, or active and spirited resistance to their plans and ploys. Today we see both reactions in equal measure. Half the world is caught up in the glamour of a war against terrorism without recognising the underlying cause, and in terrorism itself. The other half deplores both terrorism and the lack of understanding of its genesis. They know that changes on a major scale alone hold the key to enduring this atrocious evil, and call to the leaders of nations to recognise and address the inequalities which so unfairly divide the world. The latter group must grow and increase their resistance to the plans of those now in power, who so threaten the stability of the world. They must find each other and work together, knowing that they work and speak for the vast but silent majority, who share their longings for peace and manifested justice. Peace will only come when justice reigns, when sharing has opened men's hearts and awakened them to trust. Thus men must work and speak loudly for justice and sharing, which alone will bring an end to men's sufferings, to terrorism and to war. We, your elder brothers, are ready to do our part. We will potentize all actions taken on behalf of the common good. We await the opportunity to manifest our strength, to help to right the wrongs of the past, to show men the uselessness of war. We pledge our support of all who call for an end to war, but the restoration of sanity and balance in the affairs of men, for the creation of justice and freedom for all. Help us to help you. Help us to do our part. We long to act, as always, in the interest of the common good, which in our understanding is the best interests of all men. Thus it is that we advocate sharing. Thus do we advise justice. Thus do we see freedom and peace as the culmination of sharing and justice. Let us work together for the rescue of this world. Let us abandon differences in the interests of the race. Let sanity triumph and bring men to see their mutual need for peace and the restoration of an ailing world. Many await the future in dread, fearful that man has lost his way, that it is now too late to find the path to peace. We counsel otherwise. We know that the path to peace is simply found, needing only the creation of justice and trust. We know that sharing alone will engender that trust and bring men to abandon both terrorism and war. Thus will it be, and thus will men respond to Maitreya's message of brotherhood and justice. Free at last from the glamours of fear and mistrust, ready to create the future in deed and in joy.
Thank you, Peter. If ever we needed a message of hope, John, that delivery of the Master's message was it, wasn't it? That we are not on our own, that we have this fantastic group of elder brothers who are right alongside us. It's just we need to get our act together.
And it's up to us, Nigel, and we can't stress this enough. There is plenty of help. There's plenty of research, there's plenty of science, there's plenty of knowledge on how to change the way we behave and how to run this planet. It's not for lack of knowledge, it's not for lack of help. We have divine help. We have the highest calibre of help. We just don't want to do it. We'd rather drive nice cars and watch footy on Friday. We don't want to get out and plant trees. We don't want to get out and campaign against politicians that constantly push us down the road of materialism. And
in that message that Peter just read, the Master said, it is really important that we, the people, speak loudly for justice.
New Zealand's 5 million people. We have 4 major banks here. They're all Australian owned and operated. And the biggest one made $2.2 billion in profit.
Is that getting reinvested in New Zealand?
No. But how do you make $2.2 billion of profit out of 5 million people? It's
obscene.
It's obscene. It's robbery. It's theft. It's the highest of offending. Now, that was one of the 4 major banks. The others are about the same. We have to stop this. We have to stop giving control of our lives to greedy vampires. They are not going to stop of their own volition.
And I fear that a lot of the money is reinvested in the biggest industry on the planet.
Yeah, right, which is armaments, and the other one is the fossil fuel industry. And we need to stand up and push back against this.
This is the Emergence News on Plains FM. For more information, go to shareinternational.org.
All right, what are you looking at today, John?
Okay, so I'm going to continue on with this. Who are you? How do you find out what you need to be doing in life? And I'm going to start with a quote from Rumi. And Rumi says, by starting on the pathway will become clear. So sitting in your kitchen watching YouTube is not going to find your path for you. You have to start doing something, right? So for me, what happened was, and I really believe in this universal appeal, that you make an appeal, you ask for help, and you throw it away, right? So I was sitting on a plane, I was in my 20s, I was starting my big overseas experience as Kiwis did back then, and I was really upset. I didn't know who I was, I didn't know what I was doing, and I sat in a plane and I had an emotional appeal, and I asked, I just want to know who I am. And unbeknownst to me, I think that started something. I asked for help, right? So, and a number of things happened, but the key thing I did is I became a vegetarian. I stopped drinking alcohol. I started to think about who I was, and I learnt to meditate, right? So vegetarianism, stopped abusing myself, and picked up meditation.
Okay, so what helped, what assisted you? Okay, you put out the big question, you asked for help.
Yep.
But, there's some major lifestyle changes that there's 3 or 4 there.
Yep.
Major.
Yep.
Okay, so did you go to a talk? Did you speak to somebody? Did you hear something? What initiated such dramatic change in your individual life and life direction?
I was overseas, I was travelling, I was living a very hedonistic lifestyle, and I'd always maintained quite a high degree of fitness. And by the end of a very party-orientated summer, I was struggling to maintain my fitness, and that was the first thing. I suddenly went, oh, this is not good for me. And then I had a number of experiences as I travelled through the USA that shook me and made me realise that how I was operating was not correct. And so I had a number of experiences, and at the end of that travelling, I suddenly went, I need to stop. I need to review. I need to find out. I ended up in Bermuda staying with some family, and a cousin of mine, Kim, bless her, was learning TM. And I went along to a free talk on TM, and I went, whoa, I'm going to have some of that. And that was the catalyst. I did a fast to clean myself up. I learned how to do a fast. I started TM. I stopped alcohol, and I became a vegetarian.
You also had an accident while you were in Bermuda, which was interesting, and I think it helped you realise I'm not meant to die yet. There's something I need to be doing in life, and I need to find out what my mission is. Because you had a motorbike accident?
I had a crash. Yeah, but that was actually some years later, after I'd started what I call my spiritual life, and I had a motorcycle crash where I was not injured, and I should have been.
Not even a scratch?
Not even a scratch, and I bounced off the harsh volcanic rock of Bermuda several times coming off a motorcycle, and was completely uninjured, to the point where the cop that attended said, you better buy a lotto ticket. But what starts this, and I would say this to anybody, is you need to start a process of self-reflexivity. You need to be able to look at yourself and reflect. You need to be honest. So that's Maitreya's teaching. So I'm looking at Maitreya's teachings, The Laws of Life, one of Benjamin Creme's books. And on page 28, Honesty of Mind, here's what he says. When you think one thing, say another, and do something which is different again, you are lost. Honesty of mind leads to honest speech and honest action. This harmony leads to peace and happiness. Whether you are a thief or a saint, you can begin right now. And this is a key idea for Maitreya. He talks about being who you are. He talks about this kind of path of awareness, and I'll sort of come up to that. But anyway, you've got to start this process of honest self-critique. And as I said on the last program, it can be a bit rough to start with. You don't like what you're going to see, but keep digging, because somewhere you'll find the goodness. You've just got to keep digging. So you start with that honesty of mind, which begets a degree of sincerity. So you've got to. So what I did is I started thinking about who I was and what I was doing, and Maitreya then comes back to us with detachment leads to fearlessness. Right. So we're all fearful. And the ego and the personality keep us frightened. We are frightened. This planet is awash with fear. Detachment leads to fearlessness. Look at the mind, spirit, and body of a little baby. Honest, sincere, and detached. The baby in its innocence likes to walk everywhere without fear. Everyone has passed through this stage of fearlessness. In adult life, one becomes aware with knowledge and wisdom. And that begets egoistic behaviour during the struggle between good and bad, right or wrong. There's a shadow of fear cast upon one. But if one is detached and humble, one becomes free of the shadow and you start to become fearless. It's incremental. And of course, it's the prayer for the new age that helps with becoming fearless. Right? And so I started doing the prayer for the new age every day. In fact, I still do it most days. It helps with becoming fearless. So then what else does Maitreya give us? Listen to this. Be who you are. The simple foundation for the teachings of the New Age is this. Be who you are. If you're a Jew, be a Jew. If you're a Muslim, be a Muslim. If you're a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, be who you are. If you can discover the secrets of mind, spirit, and body, you will be who you are. So when we were doing public talks, I used to take Maitreya's hand, the hand card, before the talk and ask for help. And I used to ask for, and I still do it in preparing myself for this radio program, I ask Maitreya's help for me to be who I am, right? I need to be who I am, but sitting under that, I need to practice honesty and sincerity. I need to be honest and sincere, and that will eventually bring about detachment. And detachment is the goal. Krishnamurti's quote is freedom from the known. That's freedom. Not cars, not wealth, not mansions, not swimming pools. It is freedom from the conditioning that we all carry. That is the start. And it's that self-awareness, right?
And that conditioning, of course, can contribute to the higher level of fear that pervades humanity. You know, the fear of death, for example.
Yes, the fear of missing out. The fear of not being heard, the fear of not being seen. We are encrusted with fear, and we're taught fear. And oligarchy, those that wish this planet to remain under their control, they deal in fear and guilt. So what else does Maitreya say? Here's an interesting one. Vegetarianism is the human diet of the future. Eating heavy red meat creates self-destructive habits by accentuating the animal instincts. Eating a lighter diet of vegetables, which also includes eggs, cheese and fish, increases a person's self-awareness. So meditation and service, we talked about that in the last program, a vegetarian diet, you're starting to clean yourself up. I had an Uncle Harry, lovely man, and as an 18-year-old he was studying music and then got called up to World War II. So 6 months later he's dropping bombs over Germany, right? He's a really sensitive, loving, kind man. He was given a book when he left university to go to war. The inscription inside the book said, self-awareness leads to self-discipline, leads to self-reverence, right? So self-knowledge leads to self-discipline, leads to self-reverence. So once again, be honest, sincere and detached. Be who you are, find out who you are, and pick up some disciplines. I love the word discipline because it comes from the word disciple. All of our listeners who think you are practicing a spiritual life, are you disciplined? Are you strong in your spiritual disciplines? You know, we used to give public talks and people would come to the stand and I'd say, you're meditating. And they'd go, yeah. And I'd say, how often? They'd go, once a month. No. It's not a discipline if you're doing it once a month. So you've got to have some strength, right? What else do we... this is another thing that we talk about, this better life. Depression. When a person is depressed, he goes to the doctor. Very often he's prescribed drugs. Here's what Maitreya says. Everyone goes through the process of depression. Do not be afraid of them. Sit quietly and experience what you are going through. The self will be able to identify that it is not depressed. It will be able to observe a state of consciousness, a state of mind, which is undergoing change. It is the personification of this state which creates confusion and chaos. Personification is destructive. What is personified is not the real self. Observe, be detached. When you experience depression, you'll be able to explain what it is. The self, with the big S, can practice awareness through detachment and free the mind, spirit, and body from imprisonment. What you put your attention on grows. Yeah?
Sure.
So if you are self-absorbed, then you are going to have these issues. And we talked the last program about service. Service decentralises. There's some good research coming out about getting mental health patients out in the community, volunteering, service, help for others. Right? So who do you find out who you are? Practice honesty, sincerity and detachment. Be who you are. Pick up some disciplines. Pick up some good things. Build some self-reverence.
And as Krem said, don't be afraid, or Maitreya says, don't be afraid of being on your own.
Loneliness is a powerful, powerful process. Being on your own, it enables you to think about who you are. All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.